Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Leah Gleason from Headwaters Science Institute. Welcome to our very first installation of our Women in STEM speaker series. I am so thrilled, so excited to announce Melissa Cristina Marquez. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Of course, if you don't know, Melissa is located in Australia, so I'm joining you from California where it's a warm afternoon, and for Melissa, it's early in the morning.
It is, but it's a warm morning.
So some of you may be new to Headwaters. So what we're going to do here, we're so excited to hear Melissa talk, but we're going to start with just a quick kind of introduction about what Headwaters is and what we've been doing lately. So if you aren't familiar with us yet, Headwaters is a nonprofit out of the Soda Springs area in California. Our mission is to foster curiosity through science education, and we do that through creating programs for students at schools, online, and through camps outside of school. So we wanted to share a couple cool things that we're doing coming up this next year. First off, I want to talk about this STEM speaker series. We are so excited to have you all joining us. We've got 5 women in STEM speaking over the next week and a half. They are all awesome. We've got Mary Ellen Hannibal, fantastic author, coming up on the 20th. Tucker Malarkey, a national best-selling author, coming up next week, and 2 skilled, wonderful women in science doing our Lunch with a Scientist presentations the next 2 Tuesdays. So please check it out. Also coming up these next 2 weeks, besides the STEM speaker series, we are running our yearly raffle. It's a great opportunity to donate to science. When you make a donation to purchase a raffle ticket, you could possibly win a hotel stay, dinner, or a gift certificate to various places in the Tahoe area. Of course, we want you to travel safely. All these prizes can be redeemed at a later time, but if you purchase now, the proceeds go to support free online learning programs. And we're going to do our drawing on the 31st of this month. So you've got some time to get some tickets, and we'll do a live drawing coming up soon. We also have an interactive scavenger hunt debuting this Friday with our Lunch with a, our Fun Friday Science lessons hosted by our executive director, Meg. We're going to do an interactive, fun scavenger hunt that you can do from home with your little ones. And then send us what you found, and we will award some winners. So that's what we've got going on these next couple weeks. This is a slide about our raffle. If you want to purchase tickets, you can go to headwatersscienceinstitute.org/shop. Now I want to get into some of our offerings for the fall, which kind of leads me to what we're doing with Headwaters these days. So we have adapted to online learning. We have a fall research program coming up for students in grades 9 through 12. There's 2 different focuses, and you can get more information by going to the link here. We are also doing a Q&A session coming up this Wednesday. If you're a student or a parent and want to know more about how we're doing these online programs, we're going to have some students there to tell you what that's about, and you can get more information and get your questions answered. If you like what we're doing, lastly, we would just want to thank you for sharing, following, talking to your friends, all of our sponsors, businesses who have supported us. And if you want to support us some more, you can go to headwatersscienceinstitute.org/donate. Of course, Melissa's talk today is completely free. And if you want to make a donation as your ticket price, we would love that. You can head to the link here. It supports our free online learning programs for students this fall, which kind of leads me into a question I have for Melissa. So I wanted to kind of talk to you as we get into your talk. In the past few months, I've noticed that communities have band together to really support education, in particular using science and technology in new ways to communicate with one another and to promote learning of all different mediums. What's been your experience with that, and do you have any more thoughts?
I think it's one of those things where I'm a big proponent of science literacy. I believe that science literacy matters, regardless of what career path you choose to pursue. The critical skills that you learn in regards to science, so those thinking skills that require us to observe, question, test, evaluate, and then question again and revise our opinions kind of as needed, helps you succeed not only in school and work, but also in life. So I think using technology to get science out there to a greater audience that may not always have access to it is really, really important. So the work that you guys are doing of turning your science content online essentially is very, very important, especially in times where we can't be able to have science face to face.
I appreciate that. I think that's a very interesting connection. And I also wanted to ask you, I know that you do a lot of public speaking, and one of your missions is to kind of make science really real to people who don't necessarily have it in their daily lives. Why do you think it's important to have a community at large care about science and to know about STEM careers?
Yeah, well, it's kind of how I said earlier, you know, those skills that we kind of get, critical thinking skills that we kind of get in science are really important to help drive a community forward. So if a community is science literate, I think they're kind of a bit better off in making decisions that will benefit their community as a whole. Not only being able to do technological advances that we might not be able to think of if it wasn't for those scientific literacy skills that you get, but also coexisting in a way with nature that we might not have thought of previously as well.
Mm-hmm. That totally makes sense. And so I am sure that our audience by this time is dying to hear from you and to hear what that science actually is. So I'm going to go into your bio, Melissa. I'll give you a second here to get your screen share going. So Melissa Marquez is a Latina marine biologist and wildlife educator with a bachelor's in marine ecology and conservation, degree from New College of Florida, and a master's in science from a master's in marine biology from Victoria University in Wellington. She's a freelance environmental writer for Forbes, a scholastic author. She's a podcast host, a TV presenter, and so much more. She's also the founder of the Fins United Initiative, a program that brings attention to the unusual and diverse sharks of the world, some of which you may hear about today, touching also on the diverse scientists who study them and the threats these animals face. She is currently working on her PhD at Curtin University, studying human-wildlife conflict and shark habitat use. And today, she is going to talk about what she has learned from sharks.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I'll go ahead and I'll share my screen now for you all to see my PowerPoint. So because this is a social media platform, you guys can follow me on those social medias that you see down below, on Twitter, Instagram, on Facebook. Those are all the ones that I'm at. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how sharks have brought me to Australia, but also the lessons that they've kind of taught me in life. So a little bit about me that's not kind of in that bio is I am a Latina marine biologist. So I am Puerto Rican and Mexican, and I'm 26 years old. I study sharks and their relatives, the rays, the skates, and the chimeras, which are collectively known as chondrichthyans. And like was already said, I did my master's degree in Wellington, New Zealand, studying deep sea fisheries there. But decided after I finished to not leave the Southern Hemisphere just yet. So moved over to Sydney, had a little bit of a break between my degrees, and then moved over to Perth, Australia, where I'm currently doing my PhD. So what I study is shark habitat use, so why they are where they are, as well as using technology to be able to figure that out. So I'm using underwater video cameras known as BRUVs, which stands for Baited Remote Underwater Video Cameras. And I'm also using drones for my research, but I'm also looking at a specific part of the conservation equation, which I like to call it, that a lot of people kind of forget about, which is human-wildlife conflict, so us. Essentially, this means I'm interested in seeing how our perceptions and our relationships towards sharks has actually evolved over time, and if those attitudes influence conservation initiatives or management initiatives in a positive or an unpositive way. a little bit more about me. Like I was already said, I am a television presenter over in the United States. We just had Shark Week, so you might have actually seen 2 of my shows. I wasn't on a new show this year due to COVID restricting travel, but 2 of my shows, Cuba's Secret Shark Lair and Guadalupe Kill Zone, did play, so you might have seen me there. I am also a podcast presenter for Conciencia Azul, so if you speak Spanish and you like talking about conservation in Spanish language, definitely check it out. And I am a public speaker, so I've traveled around the world talking to people, not just about sharks in our oceans, but what it's like to be a woman in STEM and science literacy. So I'm super, super excited to be here and yeah, talk to you guys a little bit more about what's going on. I am also a scholastic author. So if you guys like reading about wildlife and wild animals, definitely try to pick up my book, Wild Survival, which is landing in February 2021 is when it finally publishes, but pre-orders are open now. The cool thing about these are actually all based on encounters that I've had with wildlife as a marine biologist and as a wildlife ecologist as well. So everything you read has essentially happened to me. So one thing that a lot of people ask is, Melissa, why sharks? Out of all the animals that you could have thought of, why sharks? And I'm pretty sure my parents would have been happy if I had stuck to like manatees or guppies, like my dad likes to jokes. But I moved from Mexico to the States. I turned on the Discovery Channel, and that was where I got my first glimpse of a shark, like a real shark, jumping and breaching through the air, which was really, really cool for me. And that kind of solidified it of like, yes, that is what I want to study. And a lot of people don't realize that sharks are ecologically, economically, and culturally important. And what I mean by that is ecologically, they make sure our ocean stays healthy. So without a healthy population of sharks, you don't have a healthy oceanic ecosystem. And that goes everything from, you guys might have heard that they keep the food chain in balance. Very true. They also create meals. So any scraps that they leave over, because they're very messy eaters, other animals will eat off of that. Any carcasses that they leave left over, other animals will eat on that. And of course, when the shark eventually dies, it also becomes a food source for other animals. Plus, sharks eat a lot, so every time they poop over, like, say, a coral reef system or any other habitat, that actually acts like fertilizer as well. So those are just a few examples of how sharks kind of keep the ocean marine habitat healthy. Economically, there is something that's called shark tourism. So a lot of people travel around the world to go dive with sharks, go swim with sharks. It's a $1 million to $1 billion industry every year and employs tens of thousands of people, which not only helps the people who are actually giving the tours for the sharks, but the people around as well. Because if someone, say, goes to South Africa to dive with great white sharks over there, well, they need a place to stay, they need to eat food, so that benefits the local economy as well. And culturally, a lot of people still do see sharks as either ancestors, as gods, or as people who have shaped their landscape. Some good examples of that are the people in Hawaii, as well as the Aborigines here in Australia. The first time I saw a shark was when I was about 14. The exact shark, not the exact same shark, but the species of shark, a nurse shark. And I was learning to dive and got to see this beautiful animal just chilling under a rock ledge by a coral reef. And I was screaming with joy. I actually had so many bubbles coming out of my regulator. And when I popped back up, I was screaming, "Oh my God, it's a shark, it's a shark." And everyone's like, "Is she afraid?" But no, I was really, really happy, and they kind of got used to me screaming. And that's still kind of me today, screaming every time I see a shark, because I'm so, so excited. But being down there with the sharks has actually taught me quite a lot. Not just about their biology, their ecology, or anything like that, but just lessons about life. That lesson that I learned that day was just the beauty of living in the moment. And what I mean by that is when you scuba dive, you can't be on your phone. You can't be talking to other people. You basically only focus on your air, making sure everything's safe around you, but also just taking a moment to kind of breathe and look around at the amazing ecosystem around you. So that's what sharks have kind of taught me, is that beauty of just being and being forced to be fully present and just watch them be sharks. Because I mean, look, if you see something like that, you're not going to be paying attention to anything else. So sharks have taught me a lot about life, and one of them is patience. So what you see in that moving GIF there is a woebegone shark, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. But essentially, woebegone sharks, they lie in wait, and they wait for the time to essentially strike for when an animal comes over and they eat it, such as we see in this GIF. They kind of bury themselves under their sand and they wait. And I don't mean for a few minutes or a few seconds. I mean sometimes a few hours to maybe a few days. So I think that's a great lesson to kind of learn is patience, especially in a world where we can get super impatient of our phone not turning on time, something not downloading fast enough, internet being super slow. It's nice to kind of just take a lesson from the woebegone sharks and slow down and just be a little bit patient. Now, woebegone sharks are one of my favorite. We have quite a lot of them here in Australia. They are benthic sharks. That means you find them on the ocean floor. They're also known as carpet sharks because, as you can kind of see by this picture, they're very ornately colored. So they look a little bit like carpets. They are pretty much well known for their flattened bodies. They kind of look like a shark that got steamrolled over. And they're beautiful, beautiful animals. Their head, you can kind of see towards the front of it. They've got like these little fleshy little barbels. We don't know exactly the full length of why they need them, but we do think it's kind of extra sensory for them to be able to figure out if there's food nearby. There's only about 8 species in this family, and most of them actually occur here in Australia. So first time I got to see one, I was very, very excited. Another great lesson that sharks have taught me is working with the right people. So oftentimes when you go through life, you surround yourselves with smart people and people you can kind of interchange ideas with. And so I think that's really important, and it's a type of networking. Because it's one of the best ways to learn and grow. There's this quote that I really like that says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I think that's a great thing to kind of take away with is, you know, constantly challenge yourself, constantly learn new things, and surround yourself with people who support you and who cheer you on when you're having a bad day. So yeah, sharks are great with working with the right people. Now, some sharks are but there's actually other sharks as well that in packs, such as these guys. So National Geographic shared this a few years ago, I want to say, and they're known as the 700 sharks. Essentially, this is an atoll in French Polynesia where there's a channel that connects the lagoon to the ocean. And essentially, it's hunting grounds for up to 900 reef sharks, including sharks, silver tips, black tips. You see quite a lot of them here. And essentially what the researchers have found is that this is a relatively pristine ecosystem, and these sharks are hunting in packs. So they're working together to be able to get a piece of the meal, which you can see that top shark there does have a fish. Now, sometimes they don't cooperate together. Sometimes they usually don't share the prey. Usually the first shark to catch the fish is the one that gets it. But it is quite interesting of them herding together towards a common goal, which is pretty cool. And that kind of goes into the next lesson that sharks have taught me, which is luck goes both ways. So sometimes the shark is really lucky and catches their intended prey. Sometimes it doesn't, and it gets a mouthful of seawater or sand. It's important to kind of remember that lesson, because no matter how hard you work, there will be some good and some bad luck. Sometimes you'll achieve what you want to achieve. Sometimes you won't. If you don't, it's okay to feel sorry for yourself for a little bit, but don't stay there. Brush it off, use it as a lesson, and continue forward. And if you have good luck, well, be happy, be thankful, and embrace it. And good luck and bad luck depends who it's happening to, and I'll kind of give you an example for that. So this is a great white shark over in South Africa. Now, for the shark, because it missed the meal of the seal, but for the seal, it's good luck because it's just escaped the jaws from a great white shark. So luck really puts into perspective of who it is. So if you think there's some bad luck happening in your life, who knows, maybe it's setting you up for a better thing in the future, such as a better meal. Maybe instead of the shark getting the seal, it gets a whale carcass instead. And that kind of goes into adaptability as well. So adaptability is a sign of willingness to learn from situations. you end up becoming pretty resourceful, and you tend to see failure as kind of an opportunity to grow instead. But when you get in sticky situations, you also learn to kind of either tackle it head on or do something else. For example, this epaulet shark. So as you can kind of see, it looks different from other sharks. Those side fins that you kind of see moving, those are called pectoral fins. And the epaulet sharks have actually evolved. So those guys, those side fins, can actually give them the ability to walk, as you see with this epaulet shark here. Epaulet sharks live in the tidal pool. So that means when the tide recedes, they're usually trapped in tiny little pools of water known as tide pools. The problem is tides can recede for a very long time. So eventually the oxygen starts to run low in the little pools that these guys are in. So instead of them just sitting around waiting to die, they instead get up and literally move to another puddle or another pool. So definitely a lot of adaptability when it comes to these sharks. They're absolutely gorgeous. Again, here in Australia. There's another shark that I want to talk about for adaptability, and it's the one that you actually seen right below the word adaptability. So these are lantern sharks. Now, this is the underbelly that you're seeing with them. Now, they're known for their small size and their bioluminescence, which means they literally have bits in their body that glow in the dark. It turns out that this ability to glow in the dark actually gives them a superpower, invisibility. There's a study that shows that these very rare sharks actually have the ability to create an optical illusion that essentially renders them visually undetectable by both predators and prey. It allows them safe passage from the predators, and it allows for them to sneak up on their intended prey item too. The sharks also use these light emitting capabilities in addition to their natural shimmer to create the illusion of light matching their surroundings. So the photophores that you see below kind of replace the downwelling light that you get from the little bit of sunlight that reaches where they are. And then it's absorbed by the shark's body. So essentially the silhouette of the shark is invisible. So yeah, another bit of adaptability and using what you've got to make a situation better for yourself. This is also one of my favorite lessons, which is being curious for curiosity's sake. It's probably one of the best traits to have, not just for science communication, entrepreneurship, but also life in general, which I think is really, really important. So it's great to kind of just seek things out to figure out, oh, is this something that I want to do? Is this something that I want to pursue or learn more about? Kind of like this goblin shark here. So it looks a bit funny what's going on. Essentially what's happening is shark jaws aren't fused onto their skulls, very similar to our jaws and our skulls. Instead, they can actually thrust their jaw forward, like you see with the goblin shark here, in order to get a big bite. It's probably just very extreme in the goblin sharks. Don't worry, you will not see this one rocking up on your beach anytime soon. They are a deep water shark. And this one's kind of just giving a little bit of a nibble to figure out what the heck is that it just ran into. The good thing about curiosity is sometimes you dive right in with no fear, kind of like this great white shark. And it doesn't matter if you are big or small. Sometimes it's great to kind of just headstrong into whatever it is that you want to do to learn a bit more about it. But the good thing about curiosity as well is to know that it's okay to say, you know what, this isn't for me. Come closer to it, learn a little bit more, and then you're like, nah, this isn't what I want. And that leads into the next kind of lesson that these sharks have taught me, which is attitude is everything. So if you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're also right. Sharks don't second guess themselves. They are sharks. They will follow through with whatever it is that they kind of put their mind through. And these good things, like we said before, they take time, they take patience, and they take a bit of perseverance and stubbornness as well. This shark that you see here is actually a ray. They are a sawfish, and those long kind of saw-looking things in front of that face, it's a rostrum, so it's kind of like their nose in a way. Those teeth-looking things at the end constantly get caught up in fishing line and nets, but that doesn't stop the sawfish from doing its thing. So once it gets loose or someone cuts it loose, it goes on its merry way, continuing to do what sawfish do. This attitude is everything mindset is really important, because this actually leads to one of my favorite sayings when I'm feeling down, which is, don't let anyone tell you you're too young, too small, too anything to accomplish something, because a baby shark, or a shark in general, is still a shark. Which kind of leads to one of my last lessons about sharks, which is taking and filtering the critics. Sharks are very smart. They learn very quickly from their mistakes, kind of like how we saw that one shark missing the seal last time. It's not missing this time. Don't worry, there was no seals harmed in the making of this PowerPoint. That is it's a decoy that we use to get them to do this breach. So they learn very quickly from their mistakes. Unfortunately, sharks can't listen to advice from other sharks, but we can. We can learn to listen to other advice that the peers around us have to say. My mom has a really good saying of, whatever advice I'm given, to take it, to reject it, or to modify it. And I think that's really good, and that helps me as well with when I'm making decisions in life. So we should definitely do the same. These are just some of the lessons that sharks have kind of taught me in my short time working with them, not just about their biology, but just lessons in life as well. There is so much diversity within the shark family. There's over 500 different species. If you notice, most of the time I was showing you animals once, not more than once, because there's so many differences out there. And that's a lesson in itself, is embracing and accepting these differences and learning what it can teach us as well. Because we get progress from diverse perspectives, and a lack of diversity anywhere showcases a loss of talent, a loss of a way of thinking. But there's a problem with that right now, because for sharks, we're starting to lose that diverseness. We're starting to lose them. They've been around for more than 400 million years. They've been around since the dinosaurs, but they're in serious danger of becoming extinct, which is not only putting the balance of the marine ecosystem at serious risk, but we're also losing those economical and those culturally significant aspects of sharks as well. And you may be wondering, okay, so what's threatening them? And here are some of the biggest threats, with overfishing and bycatch being the biggest. So essentially, overfishing and bycatch, that's unsustainable fisheries. And bycatch is when you capture sharks when you're not meaning to. A lot of fishing nets, they're non-discriminatory, meaning if you're trying to target one fish species, you end up getting a bunch of other fish species, including sharks, because the net's going to be like, oh, you're too big, you're too small, you can't come here, or you're a different species. It will capture it no matter what. You've also got habitat degradation, so pollution. Sometimes there's something that's called TNT dynamite fishing, which is where you literally throw TNT onto, like, say, a coral reef, and it destroys the habitat around there. Climate change, of course, is another big thing that's happening in our world, and it is affecting sharks. We've already seen it start to affect how sharks, how their brains are developed, how they look, how they even move. And plastic pollution and shark finning are other big threats as well. And you may be looking at these and being like, okay, what can we do? Well, there's actually something really easy that you can do in regards to the first one, which is that overfishing and bycatch, and that's downloading a sustainable fishing app. So anytime you go and eat seafood, if you eat seafood, you can actually look to see if what you are eating is sustainably caught and either good or bad for the environment. You can find these on your smartphone app page, quickly download them for wherever you are in the world. The Fins United Initiative, we actually have a whole entire page dedicated to the different apps that you can download around the world. So definitely check that out. Sharks have a lot to teach us. They've been around for millions of years, and we're only just now getting to uncover their secrets. So it's just a question of whether or not we are listening and whether or not we're willing to protect them in order to continue learning. And that's it from me. You can find me at all of these different social medias. Like I said earlier, you can find me at my website. But I'm going to open it up now to us kind of having that talk and having any questions that you have about sharks. Let me know. I'm here for the next little bit and excited to hear what you guys want to know and learn about sharks.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That was super, super informative and really interesting.
Thank you.
I do have kind of a general question just to get us started, and then we'll get into some audience questions. I think it might be sort of uncommon for someone to think you could learn a lesson from something they consider a dangerous predator, which might be a misnomer, but some people might consider it that. When did you realize that you could connect your research and your passion to learning lessons about your life?
I think it kind of just was one of the days where I was waiting in the lab for results to kind of come in that I was like, holy crap, actually, I've learned a lot about sharks, not just about them, but about life in general. I remember having that talk about being present with another scuba diving friend, where we were talking about how we were getting antsy that we hadn't gone scuba diving for a few months. We were like, scuba diving, the only time you really get to just be fully present, because you can't do anything else. Like, good luck texting underwater. Doubt you're going to have signal 10, 30 feet under. And so we kind of just started going back and forth about all these lessons that we learned from scuba diving. And I realized that a lot of the lessons I also was learning from sharks. So it wasn't like a moment of me being like, yes, I'm going to learn about sharks and I'm going to learn about life as well. It was kind of just I just happen to be learning about life at the same time as I'm learning about these really cool animals.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So I have a question from Laura here. Very specific question about sharks themselves. Are the dermal denticles of sharks unique to the species?
Yeah, they actually are. Good question. So dermal denticles are what cover the shark's skin. If you've ever felt sandpaper, that's kind of what shark skin feels like. It's sort of smooth in one way, so it feels like that sandpaper in another way, and it feels like rougher sandpaper if you go the other way, and you end up getting cut, which is what we shark scientists call shark burn. It is very painful. It's like rug burn, essentially, except you're in salt water, so the cut is immediately in pain. But it is unique to the specific species, and also it's unique where it is on the shark. So one shark can actually have different dermal denticle shapes depending where it is, which means like the head might have a different dermal denticle shape than those pectoral fins, the side fins, which may have a different dermal denticle shape than, say, the stomach or the end of the tail. So yeah, it's really, really unique. It's something that we're still trying to learn about, but those dermal denticles have actually influenced and bio-influence. So what I mean by that is, for example, a few years ago, there was a swimsuit that was designed with dermal denticles in mind to make them a bit more hydrodynamic. Well, it turns out the Olympics had to ban them because not everyone had access to them, and it made you a bit faster. The same with airplane wings, and I think rockets as well are starting to get a few cues and some inspiration from dermal denticles as well to make them more aerodynamic. So yeah, you get a lot of bio-inspiration from the natural world.
Interesting. Thank you, Laura, for the question. Laura was one of our summer program students who did some really great research. Thanks for watching, Laura. Let's take another question. What percentage of the scientists you work with are women?
So the American Elasmobranch Society, which I think is one of the biggest societies when it comes to learning about sharks, of like shark professionals, well, shark, skate, ray, and chimera professionals, is over 50% women. So it depends kind of where you are. Like, for example, out of my 3 PhD advisors, 2 of them are males. But a lot of the people in the lab are females. My lab is majority female as well. So we are out there, regardless of what the media kind of portrays. We are out there.
That's great to hear. We are big proponents of women in science, as I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah, well, I have a whole TED Talk about it.
Yes.
If you guys want to see it, it's called Sharks and Female Scientists More Alike Than You Think. It is on YouTube. And I talk just about this, about not seeing women shark scientists in the media and how that kind of makes it seem like a boys' club. And I mean, it is in a way sometimes a boys' club, but we're out there and we're doing some pretty awesome science.
Great. Okay, another one. This one's from Connor. Is it scary to dive with sharks?
For me, no. For other people, maybe, depending on what their thoughts are about sharks. So I've never been afraid of diving with sharks, even though I'm quite small and I look like a snack probably for some of them, but they've never shown interest in me like that. I've always told people that if you want to kind of get over your fear about sharks, swim with them. And not always in the wild, you know, not everyone can go to the beach or go scuba diving to snorkel, but there are sometimes ways that you can dive with sharks, say at your local aquarium. And that's a great way of kind of doing it in a more controlled area. And I think the reason why I tell people to do this is because you see them in a different way when you're kind of in their environment with them. When you see them lazily just swimming about, kind of looking at you, kind of not looking at you, more often than not, like swimming away from you because you're making too many splashes and too much noise. So I think it's really important for people to see them in their natural habitat, because then you slowly start chipping away at the idea of them being these like man-eating monsters, these mindless animals. You see them really for what they are, which is really amazing fish. Which when you kind of like reduce them to really amazing fish, people are like, oh, okay, they're not that scary. And you know, like I said earlier, there's over 500 different species of sharks. So you don't have to go diving with, say, a great white shark. You can go with a whale shark, which is the biggest shark that we've got currently out there. It's 60 feet long, so about as wide as a school bus. I know, it sounds scary, but they're filter feeders. They eat tiny plankton. They will not hurt you. And their throats are so small that even if in the like rare chance you somehow got in its mouth, please don't, it can't even swallow you. So like, that's fine. You've got the epaulet sharks here in Australia that I was showing you, the ones that move. They're about as big as my hand. So there's so many sharks to be able to be with in their natural habitat that don't have to be the scary looking sharks, for you to kind of get over that fear of diving with them. And who knows, maybe you might become a big shark fanatic like I am.
So Connor, we want you to comment back on our Facebook after you've tried your dive with sharks. We support it.
Yeah,
so
you'll definitely have to tell.
Yeah. So another question to tag along to that, is there a particular shark that you haven't been diving with but would like to?
Oh God, there's so many of them. Funnily enough, I haven't gone with like whale shark diving or snorkeling yet. That's like on my top to-do list. And I want to go in Ningaloo in Western Australia, hopefully after COVID. So whale sharks definitely with my Australian family over here. But basking sharks are also really high up on that list. I would love to see basking sharks and be able to go swimming with them. I have a few friends in Ireland who told me if I get my butt over there that they'll take me. So crossing my fingers and toes, COVID will end shortly so I can go.
Some of us want COVID to end so we can go to the grocery store, and others want it to end so we can go shark diving.
Yeah, exactly.
This question is from one of our youngest followers, part of the Headwaters family. This is from Mari. How long have you been studying sharks?
So I started studying sharks when I was in my undergraduate, and I started that back in 2011. So about 9 years, give or take.
Wow, you've accomplished a lot.
It's been a while.
Great. And what does a day in the life of a shark scientist look like?
You know, the funny thing is that a lot of people, when I tell them I'm a shark scientist, they're like, you're out in the boat a lot. And I'm like, no, I have some field time where I go out in the boat. But a lot of times shark scientists are doing this, which is behind a computer screen analyzing our data. So for example, I'm working right now on a research project that we did those BRUVs, so those underwater video cameras. We have over 405 hours of footage that we have to look at. That's a lot of looking at a computer screen with some popcorn and snacks to see if on the off chance you might get a shark. So yeah, it's a lot of being behind the computer screen, a lot of writing, because we have to get our research out there. So we do a lot of publishing, getting money to do our research. So grant writing, asking for scholarships and whatnot. And then of course, presenting, not just in ways like this, but also in conferences as well. For example, tomorrow, I'm actually going to be talking about the results of those 405 hours of video footage for a conference. As part of like my PhD. So that's what most of our time looks like. During field time, it's us getting up early in the morning or staying up late at night, depending what project you're doing, going out either to the beach, going to fishery stalls, going out on the boat, using a bunch of technology such as those drones, those brubs, possibly tags, and being out there with the animals. It is a myth that you need to be a scuba diver to be a marine biologist. I think I know like 3 or 4 people out of the 200 plus shark scientists I know who actually scuba dive as a shark scientist for their research. So you don't have to be scuba dive certified to be a marine biologist or even to be a shark scientist.
Another myth. Thank you for dispelling that for us. Another question here. What shark do you think is the most misunderstood?
That's a tough one. I would say the great white. And the reason for that is because they're always on the news in regards to shark bites. And note how I said shark bite, not shark attack, because usually the word attack has some pretty bad connotations to it. And so I think a lot of people, when they think of a mindless man-eater or a monster, they think of great white sharks, and that's just not it. They're really intelligent animals that we still don't know a lot about. They're quite infamous. You know, you ask people about a shark, most of them are going to list great white as probably one of their top 3 that they know. But we still don't know a lot about them. For example, we've never seen them mate. We've never seen them give birth. We're just starting to figure out about their brains. So there's a lot we don't know about great whites, and I feel like they get this really bad rap because they do tend to be the ones that end up being involved in these bites. But they're important parts of their ecosystem. We need them, and yeah, they're fascinating animals. So I think they're definitely one of the most misunderstood out there, if not the most.
Mm-hmm. And I do have a follow-up question to kind of add to that. I think that you've advocated a lot for sharks being really misunderstood, and that it's important to understand them scientifically as much as it is to make an opinion about whether you like or dislike them. Can you talk a little bit more about that dichotomy of using science to make decisions?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where making decisions, you can talk about it rationally, but you also have to think about it emotionally as well. Especially for sharks, there is a lot of emotion behind it because you do have those scary events of a shark bite. And you know, you can tell people the stats of you're more likely to get squished by a vending machine or get run over by a cow than you are of ever getting bit by a shark. But it doesn't really mean much to people because those are just numbers. It could still happen. It's still a risk and whatnot. So I think, yeah, the science of coming up with a decision of how to feel about an animal is important. But I think we've got to learn more about the emotional side of it as well. And for me, I think it's really important that we reevaluate our relationship with nature, that coexisting with nature mindset. That's actually what my second TED Talk's going to be about once COVID's over. It's going from us being like, right, we're a part of the food chain to us thinking that we kind of rule it and that we're at the top of it. One great example of this is a lot of people saying that oceans are shark-infested waters. They're not. That's their home. That's where they're supposed to be. And so where are you, like, you know, if you saw a bunch of sharks just chilling at your local grocery store or on your front yard, yeah, it might be shark infested, but you know, the water is their bit. That's where they belong. And so we need to kind of learn how to coexist with them. And this doesn't just go just for sharks. It's for any animal that kind of has this bad reputation. For example, wolves, bears, including polar bears, crocodiles, any of those big fierce animals that we kind of think are infesting an area. Really, they've been there way longer than we have, so we have to learn how to coexist with them a bit better. So it's not just science behind making decisions, and I don't advocate just for that. Sharks, I think you've got to look at the science. Like, your chances of ever getting bit by a shark are very, very low. But we've also got to learn about the emotional, the human side of how we feel about these animals, because that's the only way we're going to be able to make policies that encompass holistically the protection of sharks.
Absolutely. Thank you for speaking on that so eloquently. And this leads to Mari's question here, talking about the protection of sharks. What species is the most endangered?
Funnily enough, it's not a shark species that is the most endangered out of the elasmobranchs ranks. It's actually a ray species, which are known as the guitarfish. Or the wedgefish also is what they might be known as. So that sawfish that I also showed you as well is probably one of the more endangered. Yeah, there's quite a lot of really endangered ones, but it's mostly the rays that are getting a bit more endangered. It depends kind of like what you mean by endangered. If you mean like you're hearing more about it. So like, for example, shark finning, that's something that we hear a lot about. And so people think, oh, the ones that are most endangered are hammerheads, because more often than not, those are the fins that we end up seeing in shark fin soup, because they are quite popular, because they are quite big. So surprisingly, it's mostly the rays that are the most endangered, but there are quite a few sharks out there. I think the scary bit about it, though, is the IUCN, so the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Plants. I think that's what it stands for. No, Conservation of Nature. Ignore the plants bit. They have for their sharks called the red list. So essentially, if you're endangered, extinct, vulnerable, or endangered of extinction, vulnerable, and whatnot, they have a list. And of the sharks that we know of, 40% of them are data deficient, which means we don't know enough about them to be able to actually assess them as whether they're endangered, if they're vulnerable, and whatnot. So of the ones that we know, there's a list, but I'm hesitant to say that those are the most endangered because we don't have the full story for 40% of them. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. And it's kind of like that whole thing of, oh, we think we know everything about sharks because they're constantly in the news. We make movies about them. You hear people say about them. There's a whole week dedicated to them. But really, there's so much we don't know about them.
That makes sense. And I think to go back kind of to the whole point of this talk and the way we got into it, this science communication is really what helps us to share knowledge and to make people aware of what's going on and to protect species as well.
Yeah, agreed.
So we could go forever. Thank you so much for all the audience questions, but I think we are going to wrap up for now. Melissa Marquez, thank you so much for your time. As we said earlier,
thank you so much for having me.
Of course. As we said earlier, Melissa is a communicator about science and about many other things. You can check her out on all of her channels mentioned earlier. As we wrap up here, Melissa, is there anything else that you want to promote to our listeners?
I think it's just, again, that relationship that you have with nature, you know, especially with many of us being at home and staying at home due to the current pandemic. Get in your backyard, see what life lives out there. If you get to do exercise, go to a park, kind of just surround yourself with nature and appreciate it a little bit more. Look at the small details, anything from the patterns of the veins on a leaf to the smallest bug to the biggest bird that you've got there. I think this pandemic has taught us a lot of lessons, one of them being fully present, but take advantage to kind of reconnect with nature in a way that you might have not done in a really long time.
I absolutely agree with that. And if you're looking for a way to get outside, you can go to headwatersscienceinstitute.org. All of our online learning lessons are completely free. They're lessons that you can watch inside on a computer real quick and then go outside and actually do the activity. So we want you to be getting outside, just like Melissa just said. It's key to learning, being outside and really experiencing these things for yourself. And if you do want to support our online learning, if you liked this talk, share it with your friends and family. And you can always donate at headwatersscienceinstitute.org/donate. It helps provide free science learning to students this school year in the face of education, which we don't quite know what that looks like. So with that, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Melissa, and we hope you have a good night.